I don't think it's contentious to say that From Software's games have had a profound impact on the gaming landscape. Even setting aside the AAA industry's tendency to copy the trappings of what's popular and therefore implement the Dark Souls stamina management system into everything from Darksiders to Star Wars, the games have changed how many people look at games, kickstarted the careers of many now extremely popular YouTubers, and inspired more than a few indie developers to make some truly astonishing masterpieces of their own. Entire internet cultures have formed from the fans of the games, some more insufferable than others, and the conversation on the games only really shifts when a new entry in the Soulsborne series is released. From the Dark Souls trilogy to Bloodborne and Sekiro, if we even count it, to Elden Ring and Armored Car, each game brings with it new converts, new conversations, and new experiences as FromSoft continues to splatter us across the pavement in new and interesting ways time and time again. And the thing is, the games are incredibly fun to talk about, whether it's swapping stories about which boss gave you the hardest time, or an in-depth analysis of the mechanics and which build is the most fun, from the simple joys of looking your absolute best as you meet monsters and heroes and dodge roll them all to death. There's always something more to talk about. And of course, there's the lore, the FromSoft specialty, and the core around which all of the Soulsborne discussion inevitably revolves. But there's another facet of the games I'd like to touch on, one that I rarely seen talked about, and that would be philosophy. Specifically, the philosophy of the self, and what each of the games has to say on the matter, because I do believe there's a message and intent to be read in each game, and I am nothing if not an enjoyer of the noble art of overthinking video games. This video will be the first in a larger series of essays in which I will be looking at the different entries in Soulsborne games and giving each their own personal philosophical analysis. I've really been looking forward to this project for a while, so I'm excited to get started. I plan to cover each of the Dark Souls games and Bloodborne at the very least, and if people enjoy what I'm doing with this, I'll probably cover Elden Ring too, since I have a lot to say about it. I honestly have a lot to say about every game in the series, so I hope you'll have fun joining me as we begin our exploration at the start of it all, with the game that began FromSoft's rise to gaming notoriety. So yeah, let's talk about why Dark Souls says nobody will remember you or care. This is going to be so much fun. A quick disclaimer before I begin proper, I am not a lore channel, and so while I will discuss the lore in this and the following videos, my understanding and interpretation of it will largely be taken from VotiVideo's lore analysis videos, since he's so good and I'm too ADHD to sift through everything on my own. Go subscribe to him if you somehow found my videos before his, which seems monumentally unlike... Okay? Okay. At its core, Dark Souls is a story about change and achievement. At the start of all things, the world existed in a state of grey eternity. It's impossible to know how long the world existed in this state, but it remained in unchanging stagnation, undefined and unrefined. There was no life nor death, as eternity is perpetual and does not truly begin nor end. Nor was there light or dark, but far below the surface there lit a flame, the first flame, and disparity was born from this flame. More importantly though, change was brought into the world. The symbolism of fire cannot be ignored when understanding the story of Dark Souls, as while fire is a symbol of many things, power, ambition, destruction, rebirth, it is first and foremost a symbol of change. Fire is transformative, and it has been speculated in the past that it was the harnessing of fire in the real world that kickstarted many advances in human evolution and civilization, and this is mirrored in the world of Dark Souls, as it was within the first flame that the empty shells that inhabited the Under found their souls, and therefore their identity, intelligence, and ability to understand the world around them. It was the strength within these souls that granted the lords the might to rise and challenge the dragons for the surface in a grueling war that would forever change the world, putting an end to the everlasting dragons and paving the way for the coming age. It was Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, that would lead the charge against the dragons, and with the aid of the other lords, the Witch of Izalith and her Soul of Life, Grave Lord Nito and his Soul of Death, and the furtive Pygmy, the father of humanity and owner of the Dark Soul, he would banish the grey in the name of light and disparity and found a new world, governed by his Age of Fire. But fire cannot burn forever, and all things eventually fade and change, or so it should be. And as Gwyn's Age of Fire began to reach its end, that is where we would come into the story, a nameless, chosen undead, called into service by fate. I don't think there is a character that better serves to demonstrate, through gameplay alone, the power of human tenacity than the chosen characters of the Dark Souls trilogy. We, as the chosen undead, are quite literally tasked to rise to the role of a god and rekindle the first flame, something that nearly every character with a shred of sanity admits is an impossible thing to ask of anybody. Even Gwyn, with all his power and lordly might, could barely manage to reignite the dwindling flame himself, to keep it from stuttering out entirely. But here we are, struggling through a dying world at the behest of a single man who freed us from our imprisonment and implored us to go forth and save all that exists.
Regrettably, I have failed in my mission, but perhaps you can keep the torch lit. There is an old saying in my family, "Thou who art undead art chosen." In thine exodus from the undead asylum maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringeth the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know. Well, now you know, and I can die with hope in my heart.
As I said, we demonstrate the power of resolve through gameplay. We die, and we die again, over and over, to the many enemies and bosses of the game, but each time we die, we make the choice to continue, to rise again and challenge the powers that rule the world, to whom we are little more than an insect. If you fall 11 times, get up 12. That is the rallying cry of the undead, for the only true death is found in hollowing, in losing your sense of purpose, and with nothing to keep you going, eventually your sense of self. An undead with something to die for is a dreadful enemy to have, for death is merely a stumbling block, and you are the only thing that will keep you on the ground should you fall. I imagine it must be horrifying for the bosses to know that they can kill you dozens, hundreds, even thousands of times, but you need only to beat them once, and should you retain your drive, you do beat them. Alone or via jolly cooperation, you cut your way past the asylum demon. You crush the bell gargoyles, you squash Quelaag and grant Pinwheel his final piece. It's you who silences the first of the dead, strikes down the Fur Kings, breaks the bed of chaos, and slays Seath the Scaleless. You alone traverse the cursed climbs of Lordran, succeed where all of us fail, and eventually even snuff out the charred and pathetic Lord of Cinders, taking possession of the kiln of the first flame, with the fate of the world and the decision of whether to rekindle the age of fire or let it fade to the next is left in your hands alone. And yet, you, Saviour, are destined to be forgotten, shrived of your achievements, and ultimately left behind, lost to memory. For this isn't your story, is it? For what are you but a nameless and merely human undead? Thou who art undead art chosen. It was never meant to be your fate to rekindle the flame. In truth, it was never anyone's fate. The truth is, anyone could have accomplished what you did, had they only the strength of will. This prophecy is merely a call to arms, a summoning to the service of the very gods that scorn you, in an age that punishes you for the mere crime of existing, for being human. Anyone could do it. We see this again and again, as others do achieve what we must struggle to accomplish. Solaire, Sigmire, Tarkus. Again and again we find men who have surpassed us and passed us by. Solaire is always seemingly one step ahead, leaving his summon sign for us to find should we require his aid. Sigmire, bumbling though he may seem, finds Sen's fortress, Blighttown, even the ruins of Lost Islith before us, and Tarkus even strikes down the Iron Golem. Something he's more than happy to do again, should you summon him, still fully capable of besting it in solo combat. Even your greatest accomplishments are taken from you in the end. When the Abyss rises in ancient Ulsil, we find ourselves turned through the fabric of time and space, and into a far-flung past where we do battle with Manus, the raging father of the Abyss, striking him down at the very heart of his power, and preventing malignant darkness from spreading further than those who provoked his ire. And yet, the legend of the Abyss Walker is not told of us. It isn't our story that inspires the covenant of the Wolf's Blood that drives others to rise against the corrupting influence of the Abyss, but Artorias, a knight of Gwyn. We are even destined to be forgotten by the world itself, as time marches inexorably onward and the never-ending Age of Fire burns through champions one by one. We, the very first, will never be remembered. Even our truest friends, the Jolly Sigmire and Radiant Solaire, are doomed to forget us. Broken down by the state of the world, one loses his sense of self and must be struck down by his own daughter, while the other falls prey to a loathsome parasite and turns on us, forcing us to snuff out his fledgling false son and in turn, we lose the last of those that could remember us.
It's over. My son. It's heavy. It's dark. So dark.
Gwyn, Isolith, Artorias, even Patches, they will all have their place in the end. But you, the lowly undead that struggled so valiantly to save the world, where is your reverence, your respect? It doesn't exist. Nobody remembers, and nobody cares, because you're not them, and it literally could have been anybody. Did you ever even matter at all? Except, you are the one who did it. Though the world was full of hollows and heroes, you are the one who found success where others could not and did not. It may be true that anyone else could have, but you actually did. And in doing so, you become an instrument of change to rival the original lords themselves. And what's more, you represent something, a fundamental force of humanity that even the curse of the undead could not take away. There is a moment in Dark Souls, after you restore her soul to her body, the formerly mute Firekeeper, Anastasia of Astora, thanks you not just for resurrecting her, but agreeing to link the flame.
Framt has told me of you, that you have agreed to link the fire. I thank you sincerely. Finally, the curse of the undead will be lifted, and I can die human. I am powerless, but I will do all that I can. Please, save us all. Please.
To allow her to die human, to allow her to retain her sense of self, to grant her hope for the first time in what must seem like an eternity. For hope is the greatest strength of humans, and it is far more powerful than even the ambition and will of the gods of this world. Hope is the source of our tenacity, the wellspring from which our unbreakable will finds its source. In this broken world of dying and indifferent gods and fading light, it is the hope for a better world that drives us forward, and that we grant all who remain. We truly are the children of the furtive pygmy, for even though we are forgotten, our deeds pave the way to change. And although Gwyn, hypocrite and fearful old man that he is, would toss aside the ideals of disparity and change, we take them unto ourselves, and we rise to change the world anew. We rise in defiance of the shackles that hold the world in place, again and again, and so will more follow across the endless ages. As Lordran fades from memory and countless kingdoms rise and fall, as innumerable nations firm and are forgotten and the world gives birth to Drangleic and eventually Lothric, so too will countless undead continue to rise, to rekindle the flame and reignite hope once again. And none of it, no heroes or legends or new stories, could have begun without us and the hope we granted to the world once more. We may be forgotten, but our deeds will remain, and the world will be a better place for them. And our will, carried through the ages by those that follow in our footsteps, will eventually grant humanity a newfound freedom in a new world named Ash, in a cold, dark, and very gentle place. But that is a story for another time, to be told and continued when another aspect of the self rises to be explored in a land of kings, watched over by an Emerald Herald. Thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I know this was a little different from my usual work, so I want to thank you for indulging me in this weird little passion project of mine. I know the video is kind of short when compared to most of my other projects, but it's probably best to think of this as more of an introduction than anything else. I really love the Soulsborne games, and this is honestly something of a love letter to the series that has brought me countless hours of both pain and enjoyment. I don't have the coming videos 100% planned out yet, but I do have a fairly good idea of how I'm going to approach the next one, which will be on Dark Souls 2, though that one probably won't come out until next month sometime. I also really want to thank my patrons, especially Lustrous Lizard, Hope's Fate, and Owen Oofs for supporting me so that I can indulge in making content like this. I'm really lucky to have their support. Anyway, I hope you all had a good time, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!